Good morning, everybody. It's Saturday morning. Happy Saturday. For those of you who have Saturdays off and get to sleep late. I know I do, and I love it. So today I wanted to kind of finish my series on emergency storage, emergency pantry storage, all of that stuff, prepping. As I've said before, I don't really love these words. I personally feel that you should always have a certain amount of food in your pantry for an emergency. Now that includes a natural disaster. So, we may not see that coming, that happens. Or economic emergencies, like someone loses their job. I mean, it's not uncommon to walk in to work on a Friday and, leave with no job by the end of the day. This happens to people, unfortunately, at an alarming rate in this country because we don't have unions. So it's always good to have some food stockpiled that has a long shelf life that you can turn to in the event of an emergency. So I wanted to talk, I've been talking in the other videos about good things to buy, things to maybe to avoid a little bit, but I wanted to talk about two other points. There are definitely levels to foods that can be used during an emergency, and I'm going to go over them. There's about 6 of them. But another thing I wanted to talk about is I've continued to watch these videos by preppers and these people that some of whom are very alarmist because they're pointing to the November election as being a possible disaster scenario, which is, to me, I feel like it's fear-mongering and I think it's a very bad idea. But I do agree that you should be prepared for whatever may come in the future. And that really, my opinion about that is that we're going into a second wave, a second surge of coronavirus. And that's what I'm more concerned about than the election. Even though I do have concerns about the election, but they're not the same as those people. So another thing I wanted to talk about, and a lot of them have been talking about it in their videos, is they're saying like, stock up on sardines, right? Because they last a long time. Okay, here's the problem. I personally, not a huge fan of sardines. Having 24 cans of sardines, we would really literally have to be in a zombie apocalypse where I was starving before I'd pop open one of those cans of sardines. Not saying it couldn't happen, but it's really, yeah, it's definitely, yeah, that's a last resort for me. So when you're looking at foods to buy to put in your emergency pantry, don't buy things that your family doesn't eat. Like I've been talking a lot about rice. I've met a couple people who don't like rice. I've even met someone who has an allergy to rice. If you have an allergy to rice or your family hates rice, don't buy rice. Buy more pasta. Just keep your head about you. Don't get scared. But it's a good idea to have an emergency stockpile of food for an emergency. Okay? That's all I'm saying. So let's talk about the different kinds of emergencies and the different kinds of foods. So number 1 would be shelf-stable foods that you can eat directly from their packaging. In a previous video, I talked about SpaghettiOs, and I said a lot of people are going to give me like, they're going to say something about the SpaghettiOs because they're not healthy and blah, 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 whatever. First of all, SpaghettiOs have an incredibly long shelf life because they're not that healthy. They have a lot of chemical additives. I wouldn't eat them on a regular basis, but they're good to have in a pinch. They also can be eaten directly from the can. After the hurricane, when I was living in Puerto Rico, we couldn't get food. Now, I had quite a bit of food in my pantry, and I actually had a propane stove, and I had filled up the propane tank, so I was okay, I could cook. But we were receiving, originally, MREs to supplement whatever food we had. MREs are military meals, and that MRE stands for Meals Ready to Eat. You just open this little pouch, and you can eat it directly from there. They also have a little heating unit, but it's kind of, I found it kind of complicated, and they were horrible. They were so bad. I feel so bad for military people who, are literally out there putting their lives on the line, and then they're being fed this crap because we should do better by them. We really could do better by them. But so getting the SpaghettiOs in this care package, we got these boxes of non-MRE foods that were like FEMA food, I think it was. And they had like Oreos and Pop-Tarts and all kinds of strange stuff in it. But they had SpaghettiOs. And I popped open that can of SpaghettiOs and it was like, oh man, SpaghettiOs. They were so good. It was real calming because they brought me back to my childhood, but also like I was able to eat them right out of the can. I didn't even have to heat them up, which was great. Because you may not have electricity. And for some people, if you have an electric stove, you can't heat things without electricity. Even if you have a generator, you need gas for the generator. And let me tell you, gas was one of the first shortages we had on the island because it was being brought over by ferries. And everybody was running their generators, and we ran out of gas. So we'd have 2 or 3 days where we had no gas, so you'd have no generator. So if you had an electric stove, you had no place to cook. That's when having a barbecue grill comes in really handy. Okay, so the next would be foods that only require heating but don't require additional water. Like I showed you guys in another video, that can of soup. It was just a chicken noodle soup by Campbell's, but it said, no added water needed. So it was not a condensed soup. You may be able to have drinking water, and you may be able to have even like power to heat things, but often after natural disasters especially, the actual water coming out of your tap may be tainted. So you may need to purify it, and you absolutely probably don't want to drink it, which means you need to conserve your actual drinking water. That would include your water that goes into food prep. So having things in your stockpile that don't require extra water, maybe just a little heating, is another thing to look for. Number 3 would be foods that require heating and required water. So that would be like condensed soup, like, like a traditional Campbell's tomato soup is condensed. You need to add water or milk to it to actually heat it. Again, it's good to kind of like have your stockpile not just be all one kind of food. Diversify it a little bit so that as situations, because, within a week of having a natural disaster, things might improve a little bit, but it may be a whole month before things really get better. So another one would be any foods that require additional ingredients, especially ingredients that might be perishable. Now, I had bought Bisquick because it's such a great all-purpose thing to have in your pantry. But it requires, for making biscuits, milk. So, right? So here's another item that has to be added to it, and it's perishable. I mean, some other things are also non-perishable, might be added to something like Bisquick, but just keep in mind, it's better to have things that are really complete. In fact, if you look at pancakes and things like pancake mixes and things like that, they say complete when they have all the ingredients. They don't require anything else. All right, so the 5th kind of food you would have is food that's shelf stable until it's opened. Then it will require refrigeration, like the aseptic box of milk that I showed you guys. That stuff can sit on a shelf, but when you open it, it requires refrigeration because the vacuum seal has been broken. So that's important to think about that. Again, diversify. So, and number 6 would be perishable items. Now, you don't want to put a lot of perishable items into your long-term storage, but there are a couple things that, even though they are perishable, do last a long time. And that would be things like potatoes and onions. They will eventually go bad, but they're a great thing to stock up on when they're cheap, because if you keep your potatoes in a cool, dark, like dry place, they'll last sometimes months. So they're a nice thing to have on hand, just in general, but also if there was an emergency, you'd have some potatoes. And you can do potatoes on a barbecue grill, by the way. I've done them before. Sweet potatoes last even longer, and they also can be done on a barbecue grill. So that was just a little food for thought, pun intended, about what to have in an emergency pantry for storage for an emergency situation. So I'm going to end the series there, guys. I'm not going to get into all the other stuff. We all know we need batteries. You need bottled water. It's good to have extra blankets. Have a generator if you can afford one. Get a solar panel, like the little ones that you can charge your phone, things like that. They're all good to have. Flashlights, some lamps, some oil lamps. Just, again, diversify your stock of things so that it's not all battery, or not all stuff that has to be charged by a generator, or all stuff that requires a secondary fuel. But I'm going to end the series there. And I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'll think about it, and I'll see you guys soon. And thanks for stopping by, and please like, subscribe, and I have some new subscribers, so hello to my new subscribers, and leave me comments, guys. I love the comments. So Have a good Saturday. I'll see you guys later. Bye.